Hi everyone! This tutorial is going to show you how to make a perfectly square, solid granny square. So that means I'm not going to be changing the color. I'm just using a fun variegated yarn, and I'm going to be making a solid colored granny square with it. I think I make them a little bit differently than most, so I wanted to make sure that I show you exactly how it's done. What I have here is a DK weight yarn. It's the color Coral Reef, and it's from kenyarn.com, or if you're more familiar with Instagram, it's from @isthatkenyarn. You will need your hook that corresponds to your yarn, or the one needed to obtain the correct gauge in the pattern. For me, that is a 5mm hook. And so this is the granny square that I used in my Pixel Perfect shawl, and I'll probably be using in several other upcoming patterns, but I wanted to take the opportunity to show off this really pretty yarn. So this pattern, or this tutorial rather, is going to be for people who have, fairly comfortable making granny squares and just want to see how I do it. So I'm not going to be going over all of the basic stitches. I'm going to assume you already know them. If I am going a little too fast, however, you can click on the screen, and then there should be 3 little dots up here in the corner that appear, and you can click on playback speed and slow it down, or just pause the video to get caught up. Okay, so I've started with a slip knot on my hook, and I'm going to chain 3. And I'm going to slip stitch into the 4th chain from my hook to create a center ring that we're going to be working into. And I know someone's going to ask, yes, you can use a magic circle. I don't like them. I'm always afraid that they're going to come undone because you have to sew in your ends really well. So just make sure that if you are doing a magic circle, that you do sew your ends in really well, because you don't want your project to come undone. Okay, so I am going to, normally when we work around our circle, we work over the tail. We work over this tail. So what I like to do though is I like to grab my tail and kind of pop it over. So I go around the circle once, okay? And then I'm going to work over that tail again. So it's the equivalent of being sewn in twice, okay? And then I can cut it off and not have to worry about it. I do that now with slipperier yarns and softer yarns, like superwash yarns, merino wools that might be a little slippery to begin with. So just to make sure that it doesn't come undone, because I really don't like sewing. So I do everything in my power not to have to sew. Okay, so I've done that, and now I am going to chain 2. That chain 2 counts as your first double crochet, and I'm going to put 2 more double crochets into the center ring to create my first granny cluster. So that's your first one. You're going to chain 1 for the corner, and then put 3 more double crochets into the center ring. Okay, so you have your first corner of the square here, and then I'm going to chain 1 for your second corner, and I'm going to put in 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. Okay, so you have the bottom of your square and 2 sides. So side 1, side 2, side 3. Chain 1 for your third corner here, and put 3 more double crochets into the center of the ring. And then chain 1 for the last corner. Okay, you see your little square forming here? Now I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the first double crochet, not into my chain 2, okay? Just creates a little more of a seamless, nice look. I don't like the look of that gappy, holy chain 3 tugging, pulling bit, so I always skip over it. That's why I chain 2 instead of 3, if you're familiar with other granny squares. And then I go right into the top of your first official double crochet, not into that chain 2. Okay, now I chain 2 and turn. So flip your square over. So the back of your stitches should be facing you. And this is how we get that perfectly square look. If you'll notice other granny squares, if you're always working from the front side of your work in a granny square, eventually your stitches will start to twist or turn or slant. and I don't like that look, so I always flip my granny squares and then it keeps them perfectly square. So I've got my chain 2, and into this chain 1 space, I'm going to be working 2 double crochets to create that first granny cluster. Okay, chain 1, and then I'm going to work 3 more double crochets into that chain 1 space, or into that same space. So 1, 2, 3, and that creates your first corner of your square. Now I'm going to yarn over and into the next chain 1 space over here, into the next corner, I'm going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3. My tummy's rumbling. Okay, so now you have 2 corners of your square. I'm going to yarn over and go into this chain 1 space over here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. So there's my 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Okay, so you have 3 corners on your square. Into this next chain 1 space, I'm going to do the exact same thing. 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Okay, now to close up this round, to join my round, I am going to slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet, not into that chain 2. So this is your chain 2 right here, 1, 2. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of twisted up because we turned our work. But this up here, this is the top of your double crochet. So I'm going to slip stitch into there and creates that nice seamless look. Okay, now I'm going to chain 2 and flip. So now you will have the front stitches of your first round and the back stitches of your second round facing you. Okay, and I'm going to yarn over and put in 2 double crochets into this space here. Okay, so that's my first cluster. And then into my first corner over here, I'm going to work, you guessed it, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Okay, into this next space right here, I'm going to work 3 double crochet. And then into the next corner space, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Chain 1, 3 more, all into that same chain 1 space. And then into the next space right here, I'm going to work 3 double crochet. And then into the third corner over here, into that third chain 1 space, I'm going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. So we're always doing the same thing in the corners here. It's really the same as any other granny square, they all are. It's just the beginning and end of each round that we all kind of do a little bit differently, isn't it? There's countless ways to make a granny square. Okay, so in this next space over here, we're going to work our 3 double crochets, or some people refer to them as granny clusters. And then in your last corner, you're going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. Oops. Okay, now to join this round, we're going to do the same thing that we did in all the other ones. We're going to join to the top of the double crochet, not into that chain 2. Okay, now the fourth round, the next round that we do, will be joined as you go to the previous work you've done on your shawl or pattern or whatever blanket you're doing. So you would chain 2 and then follow along with the join as you go tutorial. I'm going to show the entirety of the fourth round just for those who wish to join theirs differently. Okay, so it's the exact same as round 3. You're just going to have an extra 3 double crochets on your sides here. So you chain 2, flip over your square. So now you'll have the back of the stitches from your first round, the front stitches of your second round, and the back stitches of your third round facing you, okay? And we're going to put 2 double crochet into that same space, and then we're going to work our corners the same as always. 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Okay. And then along the sides of our squares, we now have 2 spaces. We have a space here and here, and that's how our granny squares grow. Every round you have an extra space to work your 3 double crochets into. That's the increase in this pattern, in all granny square patterns. Okay, so I put 3 double crochets into each space along the side there, and then you work your corner as per usual. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. And some of you may ask why I'm not chaining 2 or 3 or whatever in my corners. And for garments in particular, I like to chain 1. Just because it keeps the square together a little bit more, so you don't get a really open, drapey, holey looking fabric that you're going to be wearing. So it just depends on what it is I'm making. If I'm doing blankets, then it's usually a chain 2 in the corners. But if it's shawls or a sweater, then it's usually a chain 1. And it's just how I want the end fabric to behave. So typically if you're making a shirt or a sweater, you don't want it to be too holey. Granny squares are already pretty holey enough. And I just find that a chain 2 makes it a little too gapey looking. So I'm back to my next corner, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. And then along the side here into each space, I'm going to work my 3 double crochets, or work a granny cluster, whatever you would like to call them. Okay, and then into your last corner, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Okay. And then you have 1 space left on this side that you have to fill. So you're going to put in 3 double crochets into that space between the clusters. And then you're going to join your round with a slip stitch to the top of the double crochet, not into the chain 2. Okay, and then you would fasten off and tie in that end, sew in that end, I should say. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to save my beautiful yarn for something else. But there you have it. There's your 4-round solid granny square, and it should be perfectly square, and it'll stay perfectly square. And you can use this for any method whatsoever. So if you want to keep going, as long as you flip every round, your squares will remain perfectly square. And yeah, it's really fun if you use a variegated yarn. Then you don't have to do any color changes, and it just does all the work for you. So I hope this was helpful, and enjoy making your granny squares. Take care, guys.